G'day people, I'm Sharyn and welcome to my channel. Last week I talked to you about the sorts of things you should be looking at for buying sewing machines, and now I want to talk to you about overlockers or sergers. They're the same thing, it's just names that we call them in different countries, and since I come from a country where they're called overlockers, that's what I will probably be calling them during this video. First of all, why would you want an overlocker? Well, if you're doing patchwork, you probably don't want one. On the other hand, if what you're doing is making clothing, then possibly you will. You don't actually need an overlocker. It's one of those things that once you've got it, you'll probably use it a lot, but you can do 100% of your sewing on a sewing machine. So what does an overlocker or serger do? When you're looking at a garment that's been made in a factory, almost certainly it seems have been done on an overlocker, and you get this sort of effect. First of all, it's stretchy. As you're sewing with an overlocker, the machine trims off the side of the fabric, which means it's nice and even, and then it puts, with two loopers, threads around that cut edge. And in doing that, it gives you a really nice finish. It makes your garments look much more professional. That is, of course, in addition to being stretchy. They also sew much faster than sewing machines do. You do have to be careful with them. And you can't buy one and expect it to do everything. I would always recommend that you get a sewing machine first. There are certain things that an overlocker can't do. It can't do buttonholes. It's really not very good at putting zips in. It's not fantastic at doing hems. And it can't do top stitching. For those things you have to have a sewing machine. They are also not as good if you're trying to do fiddly things, little tiny bits and pieces that are very wiggly. The machines just can't do that. They can't go around tight corners the same way that a sewing machine can. When people talk about overlockers, the big thing you'll always hear them complaining about is threading. And fundamentally, there are three kinds of machines. Now, I'm going to be showing you Jomi machines today because that's what I've got available, and I can show you, and I'll explain the differences and the whys and what's different and what's harder. So I'm going to start with this one. This is an older low-end overlocker from Jomi. It's a 204D. The current equivalent is probably the 8004D. The very top of the threading is the same as the others. You bring a thread over the telescopic bar at the top and down the front. It gets a little bit different here. I'm going to thread there and then go around, up and over. This is my lower looper. In all overlockers, it's the hardest one to thread, and particularly in this one. The cheapest machines are the hardest ones to thread. I'm going to pull on both of these at the moment and make sure that thread is properly bedded into that tension disc. I'm following the green. I come down here, and this is where this machine starts to get much harder to thread. Green, put my thread through there and through there. So my thread has gone through the green pieces here and here and here. The next bit of it is indicated here on the threading diagram. To do it, I have to open up the machine and take my thread through here. I need to take my thread through the machine here and get it up in there. The next thing I have to do is even harder. By winding my machine through here, I'm not sure whether you can even see this, there's a little tiny hole here, so it's there. I need to get the thread onto that, through that hole. And then I take it back through the machine. From that little point inside there, I then need to thread here. So what I've just done was go through the loop from the other side where I pulled it up, and then I went through the little tiny hole, and then I've come across and put it through the eye of the looper. These machines are functional. They are not at all easy. I'm sure you can agree that's not the most fun thing to do. If I was going to do a rolled hem with this machine, I would have to be changing tensions on it. It does not have the slider that the next machine up has that changes all the tensions for doing rolled hem. I would have to go to a book in order to work out where to set my tensions on this one. I don't carry that information in my head. So these machines work fine. It's probably going to last for 15 or 20 years. However, every time a thread breaks on that lower looper, and that is the thread that is most likely to break, you've got to do it manually, and it's a pain. So very much recommend you go up to the next level. Let's have a look at that one now. Moving on to the mid-range machine now. I've had this machine for about 18 years. It's still working fine. I'm going to thread that lower looper thread again, but you'll notice up here the tension discs are actually in a different direction. These are lay-in threads and they're better. This here is a switch that takes me from standard to rolled hem. I do not need to touch anything up here to do with tensions. That's as hard as it gets, and I don't need to look in a book to do it. It's just that. If I open up down here, this machine also has the information about how to thread it, and I'm going to get you up nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. With overlockers, you generally thread the lower looper first. So it's got a number 1 there. It's indicating to me that I need to thread that one first. Come down here. It's a little bit of a fiddle, but that's done. There's the green one here. There's a green one here. All this is pretty much the same as it was in the other machine. Through there. And through there. Now, up to this point, it's pretty much exactly the same as it was in the other machine. It might be slightly more fiddly to get through there, but otherwise not. Now this is the point where in the other machine I had to start opening up the covers and putting things through here. In this machine, if I've got my needles up, and I do that by rolling the wheel to get them in the up position, this last piece that I've just put the thread through, there's an arrow on there pointing up. So when I've got the needles in the up position, I click that up. And I'm going to click it back so you can see when I click it up, there's going to be 2 points come out here. One there and one up here. I go through this one, through that one, and through the hole on the looper. I'm just going to put the thread down between the foot and the cutter. When I start sewing or I roll this forward, just going to make sure I'm not hooked up on anything, those bits will go back in and it's threaded the bits through here for me. So rather than me needing to open up the machine and take the thread through and go through the loop and then through the tiny loop and back here, it's done just with that lever. For that alone, these machines are worth the extra money. The extra value you get out of moving from the low-end machine to this machine is a much easier threading mechanism for the lower looper. I would heartily recommend it. If you're going to have a machine for 20 years and it costs you 3 coffees per year to get that extra thread mechanism, it's worth it. Really worth it. I'm now going to show you the upper end machine, which has the air threading, and these ones are very, very nice to use, but whether it's worth the extra money is entirely up to you. So now we're looking at my high-end air threaded machine, and the threading is much easier, but the price is also quite a lot higher. Whether you can justify this sort of price or not is completely your decision. I'm going to open this machine up, and you can see it looks quite different in here. I've brought my thread down, it's also still doing it in the green, and I'm putting it through there. I need to tell the machine that I'm going to thread it, and to do that I move this over here. There are markings on it, one that shows you stitching on this side and this one is for threading. I then turn the hand wheel towards me until these pipes pop out. And there they go. So those pipes are how the air moves the thread through. I want to thread the lower looper, which is this one, the green one. So I'm using it there. I find that the easiest way to get the thread to begin in these machines is to use my tweezers. I want to get about an inch, perhaps 2.5 centimetres, something like that, and I need to leave it with some thread there that it can work with without having to actually pull thread through the tension discs. So I lift this up and it's threaded. The thread has come out here. Let's look up at it from close up. Thread into the hole. Lift, and it's going to come out here. Very quick, isn't it? These are amazing machines. Truly, do I want only this? No, I don't. I actually have 3 dedicated overlockers. I have one that's set up only in black thread, one that's set up only in white thread, and this air threader I use for all the colours. So when I go to change colours, I'm always doing it on an air threader. The only time I'm really changing things on the other machines is when I have run out of thread or a thread breaks. Overlockers, sergers, I've just shown you 3 levels. Basic, hard to thread, medium, much easier, top line, really easy. When you get to the top line ones, there is of course more things that can go wrong with them, and more things that can definitely go wrong with the threading. Don't ever put oil into those threading tubes. It really mucks stuff up. I've never seen one of the medium range machines have a real problem with its easy threader mechanism for the lower looper, and the lower looper is the thing that will drive you nuts on the low end machine. I've taught lots of people how to thread their machines. The mid-range ones are so much easier than the low end range. Now I'm going to have a little look at cover stitch machines. And what's a cover stitch machine? Let's have a look. Here I've got a purchased t-shirt, and we're looking at the inside of the sleeve where the hem has been stitched. You can see there are 2 rows of stitching on the outside, and on the inside it has a looper effect. the same as an overlocker or serger does. So, can you do this with your overlocker or serger? Not unless you've got one of the really high-end machines that's a combination machine. I have in my time had 2 machines that would do both this and overlocking. In each case, it has required me to go to the manual to work out how to change it every time I wanted to change it from an overlocker to a Coverstitch machine. What's the result? I have got a super expensive machine that I only ever use for Coverstitch, even though it can do both, because I just can't be bothered with the mucking around to change it from one to the other. You may have a machine that can do both and go transferring between them easily. I haven't found one at this stage. A Coverstitch machine, which only does this stitching on hems, essentially, is that final 5% of your stitching. If you only have a sewing machine, you will do 100% of your sewing on the sewing machine. When you get an overlocker or serger, you'll do about 80% on the overlocker or serger and the remaining 20% on your sewing machine. If you then get a Coverstitch machine, you'll still do 80% on the serger, but you'll do about 15% on your sewing machine and 5% on the Coverstitch machine. They give a beautiful effect. The current Jomi Coverstitch machine is lovely. I never managed to get it to go wrong. Whether it's worth that to you is dependent on how much you're going to do and what effects you want. Certainly if you're making a lot of leotards and that sort of thing, dance costumes, those sorts of things, it's probably worth it. So I hope you've enjoyed my little tutorial about what to look for in overlockers, sergers, Coverstitch machines. It's entirely up to you what one you want to get. Go with something where you've got a dealer somewhere near you, preferably a dealer that you feel comfortable asking questions and who offers good service, so they teach you how to use your machine and how to thread it. But hopefully I've given you a few ideas about the things you need to be looking for. Take care, and I'll see you next time.